History is full of great personalities and grand battles, but it seems sometimes we overthink its grandeur. Some of our logical fallacies led us to think that history is a continuation of great and well-planned decisions, but in fact, it's usually quite the opposite. Greetings, my name is Dmitry Vasilyev, and I welcome you on my channel, Raising Questions. In today's video, we are discussing the Be Easy principle, why history makes more sense when we stop overthinking it. In that context, several questions will be answered, such as, is it accurate to generalize historical cultures as if everyone thought and behaved the same? How cognitive limits is actually one of the most overlooked part of history, or how it is not quite accurate to idealize historical figures as exceptionally intelligent compared to the average person today. And finally, we will unfold the importance of an accident and how it is actually a lot more important factor than humanity's effort throughout the whole history. Using several case studies, we will clean the history from unneeded idolization. For professional historians, this offers methodological insights from a different perspective. For students of history, it's a priceless advice not to fall for simple biases. And finally, for all critical thinkers, a valuable lens for examining present-day narratives. I've brought out 3 points that can uncover the Be Easy principle. So, starting from the first point, do not assume that all people within one culture or era are the same. In other words, let people live. Now, this is one of the most crucial advice for my opinion while studying any country's history. Just look around yourself and ask, do all people from my environment are acting the same? I mean, do they all love the same things? Listen to the same music? Do they dress the same? They are not, right? Well, guess what? People in ancient or medieval times were different from each other in those terms too. When we are studying history, when we are discussing the customs of people of that era and region, we are talking about generalized knowledge. But you have to keep in mind that even in ancient times, different people within one culture may have different preferences. Talking about clothing of any culture, we are actually talking about what was available in the market at that time, but people on the street could wear it differently. Even without internet, there was a need to express yourself. In terms of politics, there never was a 100% agreement. But disagreement was not only a product of a well-processed thought of a citizen. Maybe a person just did not like the ruler's personality. Maybe ruler's appearance was not appealing to them. Who knows? But if this can happen right now, then it was probably the same back then. See, for every famous philosopher or ruler whose ideas were recorded, there were thousands of ordinary people whose thoughts went undocumented. Consider the 9th century Baghdad merchant who preferred Persian poetry to Arab scholars' works. Or the Ming dynasty farmer who thought Confucian rituals were pretentious nonsense. Their dissent wasn't deemed important enough to write down, but does that mean it didn't exist? Nothing exposed the fallacy of monolithic cultures like tracking how quickly new ideas spread, even before globalization. When archaeologists found Indian pepper in Roman-era London or Chinese silk in Viking graves, they proved our ancestors were just as eager for foreign trends as we are today. The 14th century Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta complained about Egyptian musicians corrupting traditional songs with outlandish African rhythms, showing that culture wars over authenticity are older than we think. Every society has always been a work in progress, remixing influences. So once again, the simple advice, let people live. Let people choose what they like personally, and do so in history learning also. Now, as people can be different in opinions, they can be different in intellectual abilities too. Majority of people are naive and always has been. Words cannot describe how much intelligence we attribute to historical figures. This point is like a continuation of the previous one. Once again, ask yourself, are majority of people you see today actually smart? It is not true, right? But hold on. The second question is, but what about politicians today? Are they smarter than ordinary people? Nobody thinks so nowadays, right? Well, guess what again? Historical figures of the past are basically politicians of that era. So not only they should be perceived as an ordinary people of that time, but also that can mean the possibility of their lack of intelligence. Now, of course, there are geniuses as there are today, but if today we can see only a tiny amount of smart politicians, then once again it is the same for the past. But at least historical figures got somewhat of an education, and quality of that education is also kind of a trick question here, but majority of people did not even have that. People would go to war without any questions, believed in any prejudices and superstitions. Critical thinking was a luxury, although it seems that the same can be said about our days too. Our romantic views of historical intelligence stems largely from survivorship bias. We remember the brilliant exceptions, the Aristotles and Da Vinci's, while forgetting that they were outliers in their own time. The average medieval peasant believed disease was caused by bad smells, just as the average modern citizen falls for viral health misinformation. The difference isn't in intelligence but in the packaging. Where ancient stupidity was enshrined in scholarly Latin, modern stupidity spreads throughout social media. The through line is the same. Most people in any era will believe what's convenient rather than what's true. And all this is history, because in the end, the history is people, and people are usually ignorant. Qin Shi Huang, one of the most known emperor of China, ordered to burn almost every existing book of that time. It looks lunatic now, and it was back then. In 200 BC, everyone already understood the importance of books and preserving knowledge. People were just too afraid to say something against it. History isn't a record of great minds, but a chronicle of decisions made under limited understanding and collective naivety. We remember the geniuses because they were rare, but it was widespread stupidity that truly shaped events. The sooner we accept that, the more honestly we can read the past. Now, the final point in this topic will be the understanding of importance of an accident. This point can be discussed through the term hindsight bias. Basically, it is when people perceive past events as intentional and planned based on the result. Here also we can add confirmation bias. It's when people cherry-picking the information to justify their beliefs. In our context, this works when people see any historical event as planned, and while justifying this thesis, tend to stretch arguments to fit them in this agenda. Some examples. I think the most obvious one is the failed Mongols' operation in Japan in 13th century. Mongols invaded Japan twice, in 1274 and 1281, both times experiencing a great loss which was caused by typhoons, where the second invasion was so harmful for Mongols that they abandoned the whole idea of conquering Japan. Of course, these events were taken as a sign of divine intervention, protecting the shores of Japan from invaders. In reality, it was a natural phenomenon that could not have been predicted, but which nevertheless was a frequent occurrence in the region. Another example can be Babur's conquest of India. Babur originally wanted to regain his throne in Fergana, modern-day Uzbekistan, and waged most of his wars in Central Asia. His conquest of India was more of a desperate decision. He literally had no other place to go after he was pushed out of the Timurid Empire. Of course, in the context of Indian historiography, we see these events as a planned invasion of India. Given the wealth that India possessed, it was a tasty morsel for everyone. But in reality, such invasions were too risky. India had too large of a population and a decent army. In fact, Babur's successive victories, although were often the result of his military genius, still possessed a large role of luck. As we can see, luck and accidents can be so huge that can either overcome someone's exceptional mind or, vice versa, present a gift to someone who stands on the sidelines of history. This means we always have to keep in mind that factor even when the coast is clear. Accidents can be invisible. And we need to be careful not to fall for mentioned biases, giving too much credit for someone's genius. So now the conclusion. If you were listening to these points carefully, you might probably already see the common idea. I will describe it as the be easy principle. If you are only starting your journey in history learning, or maybe you are already a professional in one field while moving on to the next one, remember, people can be very different, they can be very stupid and unpredictable, and of course, sometimes accidents give more impact on history than any efforts of a person. Do not overthink too hard, falling down to historical conspiracies. Of course, a sharp mind is a must-have in history learning. Still, we have to keep this mind clear, so once again, be easy. So what do you think? Maybe I am wrong here. I did not try to smother the person's contribution in any sense though. But isn't it clear that sometimes we give too much of a credit to things that wasn't so meaningful in the first place? Let's discuss it in the comments. I want to know what you think. If you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed creating it for you, then please leave a like and follow. On my channel, you can find more case studies analysis on broad set of topics. Goodbye.